And we are back.
Hello again. It's Kevin and Brian, the horror guys.
That's us.
With episode number...
121.
120? 121.
121.
That's a lot of movies.
Getting more every week.
Yeah.
Hey, we got 5 this time.
And what's the common theme this time? The Exorcist. Spoiler.
Yeah. The demon.
Yeah.
The priest.
Yep.
And lots and lots of Latin.
And
Well, I've watched all these movies now this week.
Pea soup.
I feel like I could do an exorcism myself. I know all the words.
You know all the words. You know all the sprinkles. When to sprinkle the water and
That's
when
right.
to wave the cross. And, yeah. Yeah.
All right. And as usual, we are brought to you by our
Us.
books. HorrorGuys.com/books, where we've got all kinds of fun stuff. The new one is The Silent Age of Horror, talking about 30 or so very influential horror movies. And of course, we don't talk about Tales to Make You Shiver very often. It's a 2-book set, Volume 1 and Volume 2, written by Kevin and Brian.
Horror short stories.
Each one has 13 short horror stories. One of these days, we ought to record 1 or 2 and throw them on the podcast.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
What do you think? Let us know. You want to hear 1 or 2? Would you be interested, you listeners? You know, you listeners.
Yeah.
Would you like
yeah.
to hear
Oh,
an
yeah.
occasional fiction story by us? That'd be cool.
It'd be fun to do.
It would. And it wouldn't make you turn your head around throwing up pea soup, probably.
Probably not.
Unlike one of the characters in 1973's The Exorcist.
Yeah, that poor girl. Man.
She had a rough time. Of course, the priest wound up worse.
Yes, they did.
Directed by William Friedkin, written by William Peter Blatty, stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow. Sydow or Sydow?
I always thought it was Sydow.
I thought so too. And Linda Blair. 2 hours and 2 minutes, so it's kind of a long one. And if you've never heard of The Exorcist, we're going to have spoilers for all 5 movies. Yes, there are 5 of these suckers.
No, I
Or there's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and another 4. However you want to look at it.
I saw Ellen Burstyn in Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
Was, you know, my real thing where I was became aware of
She was
how
the old lady
darn
in front of
good
the
she
TV
was.
set all the time?
Yeah,
I
she
thought
was
so.
the mom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and had forgotten that she was in this. And my goodness, she's so young in this. Because it was, it was made in 1973.
Well, you watch more recent movies with Max von Sydow, and he's old and decrepit, and you watch this one from like 40-some years
And
ago.
he was
he's
old and decrepit. Yeah, he had really good age makeup.
Yeah,
in.
he did. He wasn't really old. All right, so did you like it?
Yeah, I did. Still liked it. Saw it when it came out. Still liked it.
I'm sure I didn't see it when it came out. I was like 6.
It didn't stop my folks.
But
from
I've
taking
seen
me
it
to
plenty
movies.
of times since. And yeah, this is, I think most people would go at least on their top 10 list. A lot of people will say this is the scariest movie of all time.
It's a classic.
I don't know that I would go scariest of all. I don't know that horror movies ever really scare me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind
You
of.
ever
I'm
sitting on
kind
the
of
edge
that
of
way
your seat
too.
or wanting to hide behind the couch or any of that stuff?
I'm creeped out and unsettled and disgusted sometimes. There's various feelings that I feel, but to say I'm really scared by a movie or
Yeah.
I turn a movie off and then the house is dark and there's something creepy noises or something and I'm not. I don't know. I
You
think
scream
I've seen.
like a girl
I think
and
I've
it's a
seen
cat.
too many of them. Yeah, I don't hide behind the couch anymore. Well, I never did that. But you hear about people that literally, will get up and hide behind the. I
Yes.
can't watch. I'm closing my eyes and.
Well, I mean, if you're 12 or something, sure.
No, adults do that.
Yeah,
There's
I
some
know.
adults. Yeah. But anyway,
Anyway, yes.
it's a scary, creepy movie.
It's one of the
It's
best.
unsettling
One
and
of the
scary and
best.
creepy and all those good things. Yeah.
I'll be honest, though, it's not probably in my top 10.
I'd probably put it in my top 10 of all time.
You would? Okay.
Yeah, I probably would. The first one.
I think if you're a major religious person and you believe a lot of this stuff, it probably
Well,
has
that
a lot more
helps.
impact.
That helps, yeah.
All right.
I'm back to the, and I've mentioned this before, that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-seeing, as long as you say the right incantations and sprinkle the holy water at the right time and wave the cross. And
God can beat this
and
demon
then God's
if you
on
say
your side.
just the right ritual.
Like, what? Yeah, what? This omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful creature needs these things to happen in order to help? Yeah, I don't know. I've always struggled with that with this kind of movies.
Not a big believer in exorcism.
Or
demons in
ghosts
general.
and demons and stuff like that. When supposedly, God could just flick his mighty finger and, it'd be like,
no more demon.
Yeah.
Well, there's been lots of films out there where you wonder at the end, were they really possessed or were they just insane or had a mental illness?
Mm-hmm. Some of them are like that.
This one isn't like that.
No, that's definitely really an exorcist.
You know what this one is from?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
it's a demon.
It's real.
Yeah.
We're the best fake job ever. Well, we start out with an archaeological dig in northern Iraq. A boy goes to find Father Marin. They found something small. Lamps, arrowheads, coins, and an ugly little demon-headed figurine. A little later, we see him take heart medication. He's pretty old. He's also leaving the dig soon. He goes out to another site and sees a much larger version of the same statue he dug up earlier. Meanwhile, in Georgetown, Chris McNeil hears strange noises in the attic. She checks her sleeping daughter, Reagan. Chris is an actress working on a movie, and we see that Father Karras is in the audience watching them film.
Right.
Father Damien Karras goes to visit his old mother. He wants her to go to a retirement home, but she's old school and not having any of that. He talks to a superior, and he wants a transfer. He's a psychiatrist, but he's lost his faith. This is the problem with being a priest and a scientist at the same time.
It is kind of a contradiction sometimes.
Although
a lot of people get around that and just,
He's not one of them.
Yeah.
He's got a problem.
He's got an issue, yeah.
Reagan explains that she's been playing with the Ouija board with her imaginary friend, Captain Howdy. That night, she complains that her bed is shaking, so she sleeps in her mother's room. Chris hears rustling in the attic again, but when she goes up there, she doesn't see anything. I guess the devil has to stalk you in your attic for a few days.
Like a raccoon.
He just hangs out like a raccoon, yeah. Well, the next day, Reagan goes to the doctor for some tests, and she starts acting strange.
Oh, which I have kind of a funny story to tell. I remember my mom had read The Exorcist.
Uh-huh.
And at the time she was reading The Exorcist and, creepy noises in the attic and stuff, there were squirrels in the attic. And she kept hearing noises in the attic. home alone during the day. And there's noises in the attic while she's reading this.
Wow. Okay, so she has some problems at the doctor, and the doctor calls it a disorder of the nerves, and he prescribes Ritalin. And you always hear about kids on Ritalin nowadays. I didn't realize this went back to the early 70s.
I never did either. Yeah. But it did.
It certainly did. Father Karras' mother has a stroke, but he can't afford a private hospital. If he hadn't chosen to be a priest, he'd have been a highly paid psychiatrist by now, so there's some more regret. We hear later that his mother died alone, and it took a couple of days before anybody found her. You smell that?
Ew.
Reagan has a few more strange behavioral incidents, and then Chris sees Reagan's bed shaking. Well, that ain't normal. The doctor thinks it's a lesion on her brain, so they do a surgery to remove it. Turns out there's nothing on the x-rays at all. He goes to visit them at home, and things get a little carried away.
Just a little, yeah. This has some great scenes in it.
Burke, the movie director, falls down the steps outside and dies. When Chris gets the news, she sees Reagan crawl down the stairs backwards. I think that's the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that's just neat.
Yeah.
Finally, they bring in a psychiatrist who hypnotizes Reagan. That goes badly. Yeah. The doctors decide it's somnambular possession, and they suggest that just maybe they should bring in a priest for an exorcism. Because none of this stuff is real, but if they believe it, it could be effective. Detective Kinderman, investigating Burke's death, goes to see Father Karras. Karras once did a paper on the psychiatric aspect of witchcraft. Burke was found with his head completely turned around backwards, and Kinderman thinks maybe the murder and the recent church decorations in the neighborhood are connected. Desecrations, not decorations. You decorate the church, the police don't care.
That nativity scene out front is really...
Yeah. Kinderman goes to see Chris. The stairs Burke fell down are right outside Reagan's bedroom. He thinks maybe Burke was murdered and pushed out the window to his death.
But that's just crazy, because she's just a little 12-year-old girl. She wouldn't have the strength for that, or would she? Yeah.
As soon as Kinderman leaves, Reagan goes ballistic. She turns her head around backwards and does the infamous cross-masturbation scene, which is probably the controversial part of the movie. You hear a lot about that.
One of them, yeah.
Chris contacts Father Karras and asks about an exorcism. Well, he goes to see Reagan, and she's a nasty-looking thing by this point.
Yeah, she's getting...
blue and warty and...
nasty.
She's a mess.
Yeah.
Karras goes all psychiatrist on her, refusing to believe an exorcism is the right thing to do. He then records Reagan talking backwards, and the name Marin is repeated several times on the tape. He changes his mind after some more evidence and asks the church to do the exorcism. They decide to bring in an experienced priest to do the ritual. Father Marin has returned, and he might be available. Marin's got an experience from an exorcism he did 10 or 12 years ago, and it took him months to succeed. Marin agrees to try.
And there's more about that later in the sequels.
Yeah, lots more.
The prequel sequels.
Marin warns that the demon's attack will be psychological and that he plays dirty. The two priests go into the bedroom. They do battle as they try to cast out the demon, but it puts up a fight and beats them both up pretty badly. They stop for a little break. Marin takes more heart medication, while Karras goes back inside and has guilt-induced visions of his mother.
And somewhere along the lines, there's split pea soup being projectile vomited. Green projectile vomit. Yeah.
That came earlier. I don't think that was in this scene, but yeah.
Well, it happens a couple times.
Yeah.
It happens to the first Karras when he's by himself, and then both of them get it.
Yeah.
The first time I saw in the trivia that the tube had more pressure than they expected. It was a false chin, basically, that she vomited out of, and it was supposed to hit him in the chest, and it splat right in the face, and higher than in the intended target. Yeah, so his
look of
his
shock
and annoyance is genuine.
Yeah. Well, Karras is freaked out and leaves, letting Marin continue alone. When Karras comes back to check on him, Marin is dead. Karras gets angry and starts punching the demon. "Come into me," he insists, and the demon does take him. Then Karras gets a hold of himself and jumps out the window and down all those steps to his death. Reagan, on the other hand...
Taking the demon with him.
Yeah. Seems Reagan now is fine. A few days later, Chris, Reagan, and the servants pack up and move away. Reagan doesn't remember any of it. Or does she? Max von Sydow was only 44 when this was filmed.
They aged him up good, though.
But his old age
and
makeup
it holds up well.
It's good. It's not the best old age makeup.
Well,
he looks kind of dusty.
Yeah, actually.
But it's not bad.
It's all that time in Africa or Iraq and the various places that he traveled.
Yeah.
he stayed dusty.
He was actually only 10 years older than Jason Miller, the actor who played Karras.
But he looks way older.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The real-world settings of Iraq looked great. Linda Blair was 13 at the time, and her performance as the demon was just amazing. She did a lot for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
You picture most 13-year-olds like on the Disney Channel. The acting is so atrocious.
No, she was a good actress in this.
And Lee J. Cobb as Kinderman has to be one of the most friendly detectives of all. If I murder somebody, I want him investigating. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, you'd want to cooperate with him and confess.
The soundtrack alone, The Bells, was hugely influential. Mm-hmm. The Tubular Bells.
Tubular Bells. Yeah.
The actual exorcism takes up about 20 minutes of the last half hour of the film, but it seems a lot longer because it's very intense. And I'd forgotten how much slow build-up there is in this film.
But it's good.
It's a well-paced, slow burn to get to the good parts, but it all pays off in the end.
Totally worth it.
The makeup and the other special effects all still hold up pretty well. Marin, I've seen better old age makeup, but the demon is really cool looking.
Yes.
This is easily one of the most influential horror films of all times, and many people would say the best of all times. Yeah, definitely very, very good. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. I think maybe just a hair draggy at points.
9.5.
Yeah, it's definitely in the mid.
I wouldn't give it a 10, but right up there.
'Tis not the perfect film.
No, but most excellent.
Yeah. Speaking of perfect films.
Oh, perfect films. And then they made a sequel, and it was even better.
No.
Exorcist 2, The Heretic.
Is it heretical to say this movie sucked?
What the heck? Oh, talk about a downturn.
One of the best horror movies of all time.
And then
one
they
of
made
the
a sequel.
worst sequels you've ever seen.
I remember seeing this when it came out, and all three of us were like, what?
Yeah, I remember seeing this one, and
yeah.
I didn't remember any of it, and now I know why.
It's longer, and yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. So anyway, some time has passed. I will do the synopsis then, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. We got director John Boorman and Rospo Pallenberg. The writer was William Goodhart.
Not William Peter Blatty. Somebody else wrote this travesty.
Yeah. Stars Richard Burton.
That's a good thing. He's usually good. When he wants to be.
When bad movies happen to good people. I don't know.
Well, apparently he was quite a bit of the problem with this one also.
Yeah. And Linda Blair again, and reprising her role, and Louise Fletcher, who
Nurse Ratched herself.
Yeah, I mean, with this cast, you would think,
these people are all good.
Yeah. Runtime, 1 hour and 57 minutes, about an hour too long. Oh, boy. Yeah.
Louise Fletcher was in that movie, was it Dreamscape? It wasn't Dreamscape. What was it called? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I can't recall what it is.
Oh, the one
where they record.
Yeah.
Where they record experiences and play them back, and you can see and feel other people's experiences. And there was kind
of some parallels with some of the ideas here. Brainstorm.
Yes. Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
With the technology.
Yeah.
Brainstorm was a really, really good movie, though.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
This
was
not so much. Yeah, this one couldn't decide if it wanted to be horror or sci-fi, and it did both very badly. Okay, what happens?
Well, Father Lamont is an exorcist, and he knew Father Marin from the first film. He goes to an exorcism, and he fails at it, and the woman burns to death.
Which I expect is probably a pretty common thing. If the devil's in you, he's going to kill you rather than let go.
Yeah, this demon did. And
yeah.
he wasn't, it was kind of his fault, and he feels it was his fault, and it messes him up.
We don't really see him do anything wrong, though.
Oh, he did. He faltered.
Okay.
Yeah, he started losing faith and faltered, and I thought that was pretty evident.
All right.
It was kind of his, maybe he couldn't have done it anyway, but he definitely failed or faltered, and So then we cut to Reagan? Not Reagan like the president.
I think it kind of alternates.
I think it kind of changed, yeah.
I think it is Regan.
Regan, yeah.
Yes.
And she's a normal-looking teenager, or seeming teenager. She sees Dr. Tuscan, because her mother wants to know, and that's Louise Fletcher. She still doesn't remember what happened when she was younger. But she seems, to be having some issues, I guess, and stress and stuff. Anyway, the doctor wants to hypnotize Regan. See. Well, Father Lamont doesn't want to have anything to do with another exorcism, but the cardinal wants him to do an investigation of this previous stuff that Marin was involved with. And Marin is kind of being discredited because he kind of went against the church and did his own thing too much, and Lamont wants to save Marin's good name, so agrees to reluctantly.
Did you pick up on exactly what was Marin was accused of? It wasn't about the exorcism. It was something else.
I think just not following the official church doctrine.
Okay.
And doing his own method.
The church tended to downplay the
his
demons
own style.
And the exorcism, and he knew it was real.
Yeah, he knew it was
play
real.
That game.
Yeah. So Lamont goes to visit Dr. Tuscan about Regan because he's checking up on the case. Tuscan believes that Regan feels repressed guilt, over the deaths in the first film, and so she's trying to work out the issues that she thinks Regan is having. And of course, Dr. Tuscan thinks it's just science, and Lamont thinks, well, demons are real. So, well,
yeah. At this point, he's been through exorcism before. He believes in demons.
He believes them. Yeah,
he's not doubting it like Karras was.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Tuscan wires Regan up to the EEG and starts the hypnosis process with Father Lamont observing, and they take her back in her mind to the time in Washington. Now, here's where things got a little silly. Dr. Tuscan hooks up herself to the machine as well, and supposedly this machine synchronizes people's minds. There's a flashing
mind to your
flashing light and a tone that matches, and then Dr. Tuscan was there with Regan, reliving it. And Lamont asks questions about Father Miron, and Tuscan doesn't handle it well, and she kind of gets stuck there, and Regan comes out of it, and Tuscan is stuck there, and Lamont takes Regan's place and goes and synchronizes with Tuscan and brings her back out of it, talks her back out of it, and then they're all okay. The hypnosis stuff in this was
it's just atrocious. It was worst science
That's
ever.
not how a hypnosis works.
It's a machine that does a Vulcan mind meld, lets you read their thoughts and talk back to them and ask questions. And
literally experience what the other person is experiencing. Yeah.
And this is my probably biggest complaint with this movie. I mean, it's a demon movie, it's an exorcist movie, so you suspend your disbelief in demons because it's a horror movie, and that's what you do in a horror movie. Mm-hmm. But then they throw in this weird, really bad science fiction as well in the modern day. This is not far in the future.
Right.
And it just stretched my disbelief a little too far.
That's not how that works at all.
Too many little magic things.
Yeah. Well, Regan likes to draw. And she draws, actually her artwork was really neat. She draws a picture of Lamont in front of a fire, which he doesn't take well. He says there's a fire somewhere in the building. Somehow he interprets this. And they search frantically, and they do find a small fire that had started in the basement, and they head off a disaster, thanks to Regan's drawing. So Regan seems to have maybe a little gift or something going there. Well, that night, Regan's voices start again. And she dreams of Africans and locusts, and she starts sleepwalking. Lamont and Sharon, that's the doctor?
Sharon
was the
mother
nanny.
Didn't come back for this film,
right.
but this was the assistant, who was sort of a nanny at this point.
Yeah. They return to the house where the first film happened, which is now covered in barbed wire and all closed off. Talk about cordoning off a crime scene.
No one wants to live there.
Yeah, they have it fenced off and barbed wired off. But they go inside anyway and talk, and Lamont wonders, does great goodness draw evil upon itself? And there you have the theme of the movie. There's more on that, but
don't be too good.
They took a convoluted way of getting there. Yeah. So finally, Lamont and Regan get hooked up to the mind meld machine together, and he too sees Africa and the locusts, and Miron was there to witness all of it. So this is back when...
And this is Max von Sydow with his old age makeup removed, because he's young now.
Uh-huh. So this was the previous exorcism stuff that Miron was involved with before the movie happened. So we're getting a little prequel action. And Locust Boy says, "I am Pazuzu." We get a full flashback to Pazuzu's exorcism that Miron did, and the Locust Boy has since grown up. He, too, got exorcised and is living as an adult, and his real name is Kakuma. And they have an argument over, Lamont and Tuscan butt heads over faith versus science, and, there's some debate and talkiness there. Well, Lamont decides he needs to go to Africa and track down Kakuma and see what happens. The Cardinal's not on board with this, and Lamont decides, well, I'm going to anyway. So he goes to Kakuma, has some weird visions and on the way, and finally meets Kakuma, who studies locusts in the lab, and has a special gift of scientific brilliance and understanding and controlling locust plagues that seems to be a little bit supernatural. And so Lamont, learns all this about him. Well, for some reason, back in Civilization, Regan does a tap dancing show. And Linda Blair really learned how to tap dance for this. And Pazuzu starts creeping back into, it's not quite a full-out possession.
That's great timing.
Yeah. She has convulsions in the middle of a scene and faints. Well, she steals the synchronizer from the doctor and runs away from the hospital. And Lamont finds her, and they go to his very seedy apartment. Yeah, that was something. And they hook themselves up to the machine. Father Mirren shows up in a vision again and passes the torch to Lamont. He is the Exorcist now, and Mirren tells him all the secrets of what's going on. Pazuzu then possesses Lamont, who buys a bus ticket to Washington. I mean, it's kind of weird. He wants
to go back to the house.
He wasn't really possessed, but it was almost like, he was almost kind of like he had Pazuzu by the throat and was dragging him along.
Well, according to the trivia, Richard Burton, about halfway through the film, started getting drunk all the time.
Oh, my.
And he couldn't remember his lines.
So they had to kind of improvise.
Act, and I think at this point, he didn't know what he was doing either.
Yeah, and we don't know what he's doing, so yeah.
Linda Blair said later on he was very hard to work with.
Well, and Linda Blair had her own drug issues, I don't think it was alcohol. She talked about having serious drug addiction going on at this time, and one day she only showed up 20 minutes late, and that was an accomplishment.
Well, the first half of the movie, up to about the point where they started with the Africa scenes, wasn't that bad. It was a fairly standard setup and looked like a good movie. But once the Africa and the locusts come into it,
it really went on too long.
Very quickly downhill.
Yeah, it went on too long with that stuff. Yeah.
So, Washington.
Yeah. Lamont and Regan arrive at the house first, and he goes up to Regan's room, and he's attacked by locusts. And the cab with Sharon and Tuscan crash right through the front door of the place. And suddenly Sharon is possessed and won't let Tuscan inside. And she burns to death for plot reasons, which is what you have written here. And yeah, that's kind
Sharon
of what it was.
Sharon did nothing wrong at any point.
No,
she
suddenly
dies.
Yeah,
painfully.
Suddenly she's possessed and dies a horrible death. And
yeah.
Well, Pazuzu orders Lamont to kill Regan, but he overcomes it and attacks Pazuzu, because that's what exorcists do. And meanwhile, a cloud of locusts appear over the city, which made no sense. Lamont attacks Pazuzu. The locusts attack everybody. The house starts to fall apart. There's lots of screaming and general chaos. And then Regan repels the locust. She does a happy rodeo kind of thing and sends the locust.
It's like she's riding on a giant locust.
Yeah, it was kind of that. Yeah, and everyone is fine except Sharon, who's burned to a crisp.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Well, the main point that they were trying to get across was that Regan and the first woman that he tried to exorcise and died, and the African boy whose name
Kakuma.
Yeah, Kakuma. Were all gifted people with special abilities, and this was Pazuzu's thing, was to possess these special good people and destroy them. That was the gist of the movie. That was Pazuzu's job as a demon.
The bright light attracts the greatest darkness.
Yes, basically. Yeah, but boy, it was convoluted and just
locusts.
Too long and
Well,
can't recommend this one.
The mind meld machine is just bad science fiction and really hurt the film. Possession and demons are hard to believe in themselves, but that's okay in a horror film. You expect that. But then you add this kind of completely made-up technology which pushes suspension of belief too far. Now, Africa. Most of the Africa sets looked very soundstagey, and honestly, it looked just like some of the alien planets from the original Star Trek. The plastic rocks, the orange sky, the three plants because they wanted to look like nature. It was so stagey and fake-looking, it was terrible.
Most of the time it was, yeah.
All of the African scenes are interminably long and uninteresting. They just go on and on. Him wandering around these fake-looking buildings, looking at fake-looking natives that they're looking back at him like a fake-looking priest. And Hours and hours of wandering the streets of Africa.
And yet it was only a 2-hour movie.
And yet he narrows it down and finds this guy named Kakuma in a mud hut somewhere in Africa. All he knows is it's Africa. There's a mud hut. His name is Kakuma. Could you find him?
He was guided. The Lord guided his hand.
Yeah, well, that's not so clear that that's true.
No,
either.
but I guess that's what you're supposed to assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just way too much focus on things that have nothing to do with the story. There's too much Africa. There's too much locusts. At the end, there was one Reagan and one Pazuzu, somehow in separate bodies, and none of this is interesting in any way. This was just a horrible, horrible sequel in every possible way. What were they thinking?
I think they could have taken that fundamental idea and done a better job with it. Yeah.
They could have thrown the script in the trash and had been a better job with it. This is not the worst movie we have ever seen.
No.
It could easily
not the
be
one
on the
we've
top
enjoyed
10,
the
though.
least, but I'd put it in my bottom 10.
Yeah.
Or bottom 100, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
How about Exorcist 3?
Oh, they redeemed themselves a lot, I thought.
I didn't like it as much as the first one.
Oh, not as much as the first one, but
it's a perfectly good movie.
Boy, I
Yeah.
was entertained. Yeah,
Yeah.
Enjoyed George C. Scott. Just really.
He's
makes it.
great, yeah.
Yeah, he's terrific in this.
Exorcist 3, Legion, from 1990. Directed and written by William Peter Blatty, the original guy. Stars George C. Scott, Ed Flanders, and Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif has never been bad in anything. Hour and 50 minutes. And George C. Scott is playing Lieutenant Kinderman from the first movie. Lee J. Cobb, the actor from the original, had died in the meantime, so they couldn't get him.
Right.
The ghost of Lee J. Cobb stars as George C. Scott. All right, so you did like this one.
Oh yes. Yeah.
It's a little bit different.
Well, and I had read the book, and I didn't remember the movie being so tied in with the first movie and the first two.
Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't really tied into the second one at all.
No.
I don't think there was that. You could have skipped the second one.
Yeah.
Well, you should skip the second one.
Yeah. Just go from 1 to 3.
Yeah. Well, we're in Georgetown, 1990, back where the first movie happened. Father Dyer looks at the stairs where so many people have died. It's been 15 years ago today. And Detective Kinderman still thinks about Father Damien. Credits roll. Well, the helicopters are searching and they found the body. Kinderman thinks it's related to the Gemini killer, who's been dead for 15 years.
Uh-oh.
Kinderman and Father Dyer go to see a movie. They talk about theology, philosophy, and murdering fish. Kinderman talks about a particularly gruesome murder he worked on just this morning. Turns out that the kid was conscious when he was killed, just paralyzed with a drug. Somewhere else, an old woman goes to confession, and the woman talks about killing 17 victims. She then kills and mutilates the priest. The priest was paralyzed before he died, just like that kid. The priest is missing the index finger on his right hand. The fingerprints come back, and 2 different people have committed these very similar murders. Huh. That night, Kinderman dreams of heaven, sort of. And that was kind of a cool scene, that heaven vision.
Yeah, that was.
Kind of funny and weird at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one has a lot of dark humor.
It does, yeah. Oh, yeah, lots.
Very
The
much.
murder and the fish and all that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and George C. Scott's reactions to, just these horrifying scenes and his WTF expression that he has on his face sometimes, and
You normally think of him being a pretty serious guy, but
and it is it is a grim and serious movie, but there's a lot of dark humor.
yeah, he's really super.
Yeah.
Kinderman gets a call the next morning from the hospital. Father Dyer, another one of Kinderman's best friends, has been beheaded like the other 2 cases. All his blood has been drained into little sample cups next to the bed.
Yeah, and that scene is, he doesn't know that at first, and there's these little cups sitting beside the on the table, and he's like, "What's that?" And the other cops say, "His blood."
All of it.
What? He's like,
And then they
"What?"
described how they got the blood out
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the nurse on duty at the time is really creepy.
Yeah.
That says she saw one of the patients passed out on the floor outside the father's room. It's an old lady with Alzheimer's who doesn't remember anything. She says she hears dead people talking through the radio. And this nurse, she's weird. She's annoying. She's unhelpful. You just know she's the bad guy.
She's a red herring.
She's not. She's just like that.
Yeah.
They check out the disturbed ward, and the doctor explains the security system as he walks down the hall smoking a cigarette. This doctor...
Oh, talk about a chain smoker. I've never
all
seen,
through the hospital,
I've never seen such a chain smoker in a movie. I mean, literally lighting one cigarette from the other.
Yes, yes.
Literally.
Well, the Gemini killer may be dead, but Kinderman suspects it's a copycat. Except there was disinformation fed to the press about the Gemini at the time. But these new murders have all the hidden details exactly right. He knows things that wasn't published. Well, the higher-up priest suggests that maybe that exorcism back in 73 had something to do with it. He ties together the 3 victims and the McNeil exorcism. The fingerprints come back, and it was the old Alzheimer woman that did it.
Well, how is that possible? She can barely function.
Yeah.
Yeah, something ain't right here.
The doctor tells Kinderman about a psychotic patient they've had in isolation for 15 years. A lot of 15 years is in this. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
He claims to be the Gemini killer. The man in cell 11 turns out to be Damien Karras.
What? He's still alive.
He denies that he's Karras, but it sure looks like him. They have a very long conversation, and the killer's face changes during their talk. He knows about the recent deaths, but he's been in isolation the whole time. He couldn't have done it. The nurse says the man has been unconscious during each of the murders. When Kinderman looks at the file for the Gemini killer, we see a photo of the other face of the man in cell 11.
Brad Dourif,
Yeah.
who was the actual Gemini killer.
15 years ago, and died 15 years ago.
Yeah, so he's in Karras now, and so is the demon, or the demon is taken.
He kind of alternates.
Yeah, the demon is taking their appearances. Yeah,
a nurse,
and there was a real world reason they did that.
Yes. Go ahead.
The actor who was playing Karras was
Jason Miller,
a severely alcoholic man who had, what did they call it? Wet brain?
Water on the brain or something like that.
Wet brain syndrome, yeah. Basically, effectively brain damage from the mass alcohol. Couldn't remember large chunks of dialogue anymore.
He got the short lines right.
And Brad Dourif could.
They brought him in.
So they worked this in, that, it was Brad Dourif was the real Gemini killer. And so they alternated, the appearance. Which was actually a pretty cool effect. I thought it was very effective.
I think it worked well,
that.
Yeah.
Interesting
how they had to do that.
A real world reason they had to do it. Yeah.
You've read the book. Did he do that in the book, or was it just the Karras character?
I can't remember for sure. Yeah.
Sounds like Karras was supposed to be the main character, and Brad Dourif wasn't even in it. Maybe just for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And they just gave him a lot more to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the hospital, a nurse is beheaded. She gets it good.
Yeah.
The doctor is dead too, but from suicide. The Gemini killer explains that this is all revenge for getting back at those who exorcised that girl in 1973. Father Karras is inside him now, watching everything and suffering through the murders. It took 15 years to regenerate Karras's damaged brain cells and become active again. He fell down the steps, hit his head like 17 times, broke his neck, and it's taken 15 years to heal that.
Was really dead, and the demon,
Yeah.
He goes into great detail about how hard it was and how much work that was to reanimate that much damage, and that's some creepy, disturbing stuff.
So it really is undead Karras.
Yeah.
So as Kinderman thinks over their talk, we see the old Alzheimer's woman crawl across the roof of the hospital to get outside. What? Oh, okay, I guess she moves pretty good for an old lady.
Yeah, and something's not right there.
Yeah.
Right away.
Kinderman realizes the Gemini's latest threat is to his own daughter and rushes home. Catatonics are so easy to possess, says the nurse before all hell breaks loose. Meanwhile, Father Morning pretty much comes out of nowhere to do an exorcism of the man in cell 11, and it goes badly for him. We've gotten glimpses of this guy with white hair here and there. He does some scene. He doesn't talk to any of the characters. He doesn't really do anything.
It was a little bit out of the blue.
It's like it was pasted in at the end because they're like, hey, this movie doesn't have an exorcism in it.
Uh-huh. Oh,
We
yeah,
need to throw in an
we forgot to
exorcism.
put in an exorcism.
So this guy's scenes were filmed later and just spliced in.
Yeah, they really did that.
Yeah, they
basically, yeah, they finished it and then they said, wait, Exorcist.
Yeah. So Kinderman returns to the cell and finds the priest's body. They do battle, but before the Gemini can kill Kinderman, the priest wakes up and distracts Gemini enough for Kinderman to shoot him several times. The end. So at the end, Kinderman shoots Karras in his cell.
Yeah.
Karras is wearing a straitjacket.
Good luck explaining that.
Yeah, and at the very final scene, Kinderman is standing over the grave, a free man, not in jail for anything, and he just killed this guy.
I don't know how he would have explained
There's
that.
no more helpless-looking prisoner
really.
than a guy in a cell with a straitjacket.
No, really. You see, he was possessed by a demon, and I had to shoot him because I was killing the demon, and he wanted me to.
And there was a dead priest there, too.
Yeah. It just seems like there would have been some explaining to do that we didn't see.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of humor here, such as Kinderman and the carp in his bathtub. Kinderman and Dyer bickering in the hospital, the mental patients, the chain smoking, the OCD, and the hoarder psychiatrist. That guy was a loon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those giant clipper tool things that the nurse gets beheaded with are a real thing, but they are super terrifying, and I wouldn't want to have to try to use one.
That's something.
It's for cutting off arms and bones and stuff.
Yeah, it's an autopsy.
Is it a real tool, do you think?
I don't know. It looked like it could have been.
The way it was so spring-loaded, though. Yeah. That's just killing people waiting to happen.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Well, the last third of the film had to be reshot to put an exorcism in it, and the result was kind of a mess.
Well, a little bit choppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like something stuck in. Yeah.
Most of the film was more of a serial killer mystery than a real demon possession film, but overall it was really good.
Yeah,
it's like they told George C. Scott, hey, it's a detective movie about a demon-possessed guy. And he went with that.
And I was looking up Barbara Baxley.
Who is she?
It was odd. She was the detective's mother-in-law.
Okay. Oh, she looked really old, but it looked fake old.
Yeah, she was 67 at the time. I mean, maybe she was exceptionally fit and spry at 67, and
it certainly looked like she was wearing a wig.
Made her look, it looked fake. It was her last movie role, actually. She died in 1990 at age 67, but she was up there. It wasn't completely fake, but yeah, we noticed right away. It reminded me a little bit of, is it Estelle Getty from Golden Girls?
Uh-huh.
Who they aged up to play her mom.
Right.
It was kind of that look. Kind of. Sometimes I thought Estelle Getty's makeup looked...
The wrinkles were highlighted and the hair was fake looking.
Yeah.
Well, you said she died. I don't know, maybe she had lost her hair and chemo
possibly.
Or something and had to wear that wig.
It doesn't give a cause of death here, but yeah.
Okay, so I want to know how Kinderman explained killing an unarmed man in a straitjacket in a locked cell after having broken his nose a few days prior.
Yeah.
That ought to be fun to hear that explanation.
Yeah.
So, you want to do another one?
Oh, I guess. Okay.
All right, so The Exorcist 1, 2, and 3. Then we pop forward up to, 2004 for the next one.
Which is Exorcist: The Beginning. And this movie and the next one, I guess, business-wise and production-wise, were a hot mess.
Yeah, I guess they were.
The way these worked out, yeah. The director officially on this one is Rennie Harlan. Writers, William Peter Blatty and William Wisher. Stars Stellan Skarsgård, Isabella Scorupco, and James D'Arcy. Runtime 1 hour and 54 minutes.
Okay, so begin with, they hired, this other director from the fifth movie to do the movie.
Right.
So they did it, and they hated it, and made him reshoot like 90% of the movie, which became this film.
That was Paul Schrader.
Paul Schrader, yes.
Yeah.
Paul Schrader directed the movie, and he really didn't like it.
So they hired a new director.
Rennie
Harlan.
Yeah.
Who reshot 90% of it, chopped and diced it, and made a new movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then this flopped badly at the box office, so they said, hey, let's take that other movie that we hated.
And re-put that back together like Paul Schrader wanted it.
So the fourth movie is prequel to The Exorcist.
Well, they both are.
And the fifth movie is called Dominion.
Also a prequel to The Exorcist.
But they're really the same story.
They're the same story, kind of in different orders.
Yeah.
And James D'Arcy's character is recast
Yeah.
with a different actor. And it's still the same character.
It's like they took the same outline
Father Francis,
and completely went different ways with it.
Yeah, it's Maron's sidekick, basically. But it's a different actor. And, yeah, boy, it's in different sets. A lot of the sets are different.
You can tell the second one was
it's the same
much lower
thing.
budget.
It's the same church. It's this ancient church that they come across. It's the same church, but it's a different set for the two movies. And, yeah, it was weird.
I think the first one had much better sets.
Yeah,
it looked much better overall. The second one may have had a better story to it.
Yeah.
Actually, despite the way that sounds, they both sound just terrible from that story. I liked both of them. I give them both about a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
I didn't hate either of them.
But it was strange watching, and we watched them back to back.
Yeah, we did.
And it was like, we recognize that scene, and there's Stellan Skarsgård doing that, but in a different part of the movie. And here's this scene is expanded in this movie, and
they didn't cut and paste. There's nothing is exactly the same.
Yeah,
they didn't reuse footage.
Well, they did some.
Did they?
Yeah, the stuff where he's the Nazis are shooting up the village. Some of that was the same.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, there's a scene where Stellan Skarsgård
Oh,
is a priest
in
a village. Yeah, in a flashback.
Yeah.
This is what made him lose his faith, because the Nazis came into this village where he was the priest and did their Nazi thing and started shooting up people and tried to make him decide, who are we going to kill? You pick, priest, and things like this. Anyway, I'm sure
I bet that comes up.
That's in the synopsis. I should. Okay, so I'm going to kind of skim his notes a little bit here on the synopsis. So we begin in the aftermath of a great battle, and there are dead Roman soldiers and everything. So this is way back.
Crusades.
Yeah. The one survivor takes the statuette of the demon that we've seen before, found by Father Miron in the 1973 Exorcist film. And the camera pulls back to reveal thousands of men crucified upside down and just bodies and carnage. And well, we flash forward to Egypt, 1949. And Maron, who is young, played by Stellan Skarsgård, he meets up with Sommelier, like
the wine guy.
Yes.
Ben Cross.
Yes. Who tells him about a dig that they're doing to uncover a lost church with a rare object inside. And Maron is now archaeologist and former priest. He's turned his back on the whole priest thing. Maron can't turn down the offer because it's too interesting and too rare and sounds cool. So he goes to Kenya. And he still has flashbacks from the way back, when things happen. He's paired off with Father Francis, who is still a priest, and Miron meets Sarah, a nurse at the site. So they've got this archaeological site with. He arrives. None of the workers will enter the church, and hyenas are wandering around. One man has a seizure out of the blue, but they realize it's a full-size church built and immediately buried in the 5th century. So weirdness. It shouldn't be in that part of the world in that century.
And it didn't have Christianity there in that location at that time.
Yeah, and for some reason they built it and immediately covered it up. Like, why go through all that trouble? Yeah. Well, Miron and his sidekick priest enter. They dig it out enough. There's a huge mural of Lucifer on the wall. And there's Jesus crucified upside down. And, the swords, like the guardian swords, the guardian angels, were pointing down instead of up. And, the whole thing was a desecration. Why? It's a mystery. We don't know. Well, Miron and Sarah talk about her time in the concentration camp. She's a Jewish survivor.
1949, remember?
Shortly after the war. And we get a flashback showing why Miron gave up being a priest, which is the whole village Nazi thing. And Meanwhile, outside, one of the boys is that was a disturbing scene. Kid getting killed by hyenas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was maybe the jump scare for sure.
Yeah, jump scare. And
one of the better scenes of the movie.
And downright gross out and unsettling in every way. Yeah. Well, they go see Bessian, who was the lead archaeologist who went insane. And, yeah, it's a short visit. Yeah, Mirren goes into Besson's cell, and Besson knows, oh, yeah, hi, it's you. He knows who he is without turning around. Bessian repeats what the Nazis said to Mirren during the war.
God's not here today.
Yeah, priest in charge of the asylum says Bessian was touched by the devil. Well, Bessian graphically kills himself right there. And okay, that was a short visit and didn't learn much, but okay, something happening here. Well, back at the camp, Jeffries tries to rape Sarah, but Joseph breaks in and says he's coming for you. Joseph starts showing signs of being possessed. He's one of the little boys.
He's like 9 or he's the brother of the one who was torn apart by hyenas.
Yeah, and it almost seems like the hyenas were responding to his commands.
Yeah,
and the hyenas didn't touch him at all and killed his brother.
They were fighting at the time.
Yeah. Well, Mirren goes into the church that night and finds a secret passage under the church, and he finds a big Pazuzu statue and is attacked by flies, but there's no harm done. Jeffries notices in the mirror. Have we mentioned who Jeffries was?
I don't know who Jeffries was. He was just some guy who was there.
Oh, he was the guy in charge of the site, like, the workers and the whole.
Well, no wonder nobody wanted to do anything working for him.
Yeah, he was a creepy alcoholic, rapist, threatening Sarah.
All those good points.
Yeah, he's just an all-around awful person. But his face is starting to fall apart.
Yep.
Yeah, and Sarah thinks the place is cursed. Jeffrey goes missing in a messy way. Father Francis says the natives are about to revolt out of fear, and so he sends for military backup. Here come the British. Well, Mirren decides to dig up the graveyard around the church. There's a local graveyard. Mm-hmm. Because he puts it together like, wait, the natives don't bury their
50
dead.
years ago, there was an archaeological dig there, and everyone died.
But they don't bury their dead; they cremate them. So who's buried? Well, nobody. Turns out, he digs them up, and they're all empty. So that's a cover-up too. And Joseph, who's showing more and more signs of possession, the little boy, the villagers, they tie him to the bed, try to do their own exorcism. And that goes poorly for the villagers. This demon is too powerful for them. Well, Mirren confronts Francis. Why did they bury dozens of empty coffins? Well, there was a cover-up by the church, and tells about the pre-credit sequence battle, and they built the cursed church. And another expedition was sent there 50 years ago, and so the Vatican ordered another cover-up. But the thing that the church has going is they think that that's the spot that Lucifer fell, and they're covering it up, and that's why they built that church. Somebody did, because it's Lucifer's sacred spot.
Okay.
Well, they go into the church again, find Jeffries tied up and half-eaten. Well, that's where he went.
He got a nice big hole right through him.
Well, the head of the military, decides to take it out on the natives and starts preparing for battle. And the natives are coming to kill everybody, and the British are going to kill everybody and gearing up for a war. And Francis begins the Catholic exorcism, which he thinks will work out better than the African one. Well, Mirren finds a photo of Sarah with Bessian. He was her husband, and she kept that secret. Never mentioned that. She is the evil one, not Joseph.
Which makes no sense.
Yeah.
We've seen the hyenas obeying Joseph, and Joseph's been creepy. She
wasn't there when the natives tried exorcising Joseph, and bad things happened to the natives.
Yeah, it just makes no sense. But she's the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, Sarah kills Father Francis. Battle between the natives and the soldiers begins. a little demon head statue gets buried in the sandstorm, which is, what gets found in the first movie. And Marin reclaims his faith and wins the day.
Yay!
Until,
yeah.
until The Exorcist.
Wow. Okay, so there are some.
So that's the guest, anyway.
There are some pretty good gore shots here.
Yes, very
The
much.
hyena attack is very intense, and the sets inside the buried church are really cool. I wouldn't mind going to that church. That's a neat one.
Yeah, it was very cool decor.
Father Marin's backstory was nice to see, and there are more than one completely unnecessary jump scares in this. Mostly just harmless loud noises out of the blue. There was a lot of controversy during the making of this film, and apparently it was heavily reshot and rewritten during the filming. Got a lot of bad press because of all of this, but it wasn't really that bad.
No,
it was decent.
It was decent and entertaining. Yeah, solid. Above a 5 for sure.
Yeah,
above the midline.
It's worth seeing.
Both 4 and 5, I thought.
It is unfairly trashed. Now, number 5, Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist, came out the very following year. Actually, it came out before the previous movie was released. It was started to film before the previous movie was released. So, I don't know, it couldn't have been a failure before that point.
It was kind of a production mess.
It's weird, yes.
Yeah.
Directed by Paul Schrader, written by William Wisher and Caleb Carr. Stars, it's Stellan Skarsgård again, Gabriel Mann and Clara Beller. Hour and 57 minutes. All right.
Yeah, the Father Francis character is played by a completely different actor this time.
Many of the characters
Gabriel
are the
Mann.
same. Many of the characters are different.
Yeah.
Sarah in the first movie is now Rachel for some reason.
And a different actress.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Father Francis is the same character.
Same character,
just
different actor. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Stellan Skarsgård is the same character and the same actor.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Holland, 1944. A bunch of Nazis round up the villagers over a murdered officer. Father Marin is selected from the crowd, and the officer orders him to choose 10 innocent civilians to die, or he'll kill them all. God isn't here today, taunts the officer. The officer orders everyone killed. So, Marin gives in and starts pointing at the old men. And we'd seen exactly the same scene, shot in different ways, different film angles and stuff in the previous film. Mm-hmm. But, it's the same story.
But this scene went more into it. Showed more. Went on longer.
It is the same, it's just different. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they both focus on different things.
Yeah. I think this one did a better job painting why he would have lost his faith over it. I think it went into more detail.
This scene went on a lot longer and had a lot more detail here.
Yeah.
In 1947, in British East Africa, Father Francis... Now that's interesting. This one's 47 and the other one was 49.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder why they changed that. So, 47 in British East Africa, Father Francis talks to Major Granville about this man, Mr. Marin, who used to be a priest but is now an archaeologist. Granville blackmails Marin into taking Father Francis along as a sort of a watchdog. Marin is working on unearthing an old church that has been buried. So in this one, he's already working on that church in the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
He gets and that character who told him, sommelier, isn't even in this one.
No, he isn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Different way to do it.
Weird. So they arrive on the site and meet some of the locals. The old church is remarkably well preserved, almost as if it was buried on purpose right after it was built. Joseph and James are the only little boys in the village, so they don't have to build a new school. There's a wild man, Che, who walks with a cane, and this character did not exist in the other movie.
Right.
The other villagers thinks he's cursed. Marin leaves water out for him, but he won't approach the others. Marin gets threatened by some really bad CGI hyenas.
That was atrocious.
Oh, they were, yes. You talk about some bad video game graphics. This isn't even on that level.
Yeah, talk about not scary.
Ooh, yeah, those were something. Marin and Dr. Rachel have dinner, and she talks about her time in the concentration camp. Marin has a weird dream, punctuated by the face of the demon from Exorcist 2.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. In The Exorcist 2, every once in a while, here and there, you'd see a glimpse of this white makeup face that was the demon.
Yeah.
It didn't appear in 1 or 3 or 4, just in 2.
Just in 2, and they bring him back.
But he's back here.
Yeah.
Finally, they get the church unearthed enough to enter. It's not a normal church. It looks like it was built to hold something inside. There's a sarcophagus that opens into a secret passage. When they open it up, Che-Che the wild boy gets agitated in his hospital bed. They find a statue that doesn't look at all like Pazuzu.
But it's supposed to be.
And here's where you notice that it's just glaringly obvious that this was rushed with a low budget.
Yeah, they didn't have the money for that.
The statue looks like crap.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look anything
still
like...
supposed to, it still is Pazuzu.
It's supposed to be the same thing.
But in the others, it's a consistent...
The church overall is cheap.
Mm-hmm.
The secret passage is looks like a Vincent Price movie. And the statue thing looks like something, a college kid made in 20 minutes. It's just terrible.
It's noticeably, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Uh-huh.
Why they couldn't get the same props? I mean, how many Pazuzu statues... You think that Pazuzu statue was used somewhere else in the meantime?
Or they wouldn't share it, or, maybe the internal politics didn't allow for that,
But supposedly this was the one that was mostly filmed first.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a weird story with this one.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Well, the cows are then attacked by the hyenas, but the cows fight back and eat all the hyenas. Then they get sick and die. And that just is weird.
Cursed.
The elders see this as a bad sign that the old church is evil. All the upside-down Jesuses and all that didn't tip them off. Father Francis calls in the military to protect everyone from looters. The pair of soldiers who are guarding the church go inside to look around.
Doomed.
They start prying precious stones off the altar.
As soon as they started talking about
their
that.
mutilated corpses are found the next morning.
As soon as they were batting the idea around of, let's go see what we can take. And doomed.
Yeah.
What's that on their foreheads? Doomed.
Well, they bring in a surgeon to fix Che-Che's leg, and before long it's completely healing, but it should have taken weeks. Miraculously, his deformed arm starts to straighten out on its own. They didn't even do any surgery on that. Meanwhile, Major Granville gets irrationally angry with the villagers and executes one of them in front of everybody. Worst CO ever.
Yes.
Marin punches Granville and is arrested. The next day, the natives are revolting, and several children are killed, which Father Francis takes badly. Not long after, Granville kills himself. Francis prays over Che-Che, thinking he's blessed, but Che-Che reacts quite the opposite from what's expected. Francis wants to baptize Che-Che, but Che-Che wants it done in the church. You can just say Che-Che all day.
Che-Che, yeah.
Tensions between the Africans and the British increase, and the Sergeant Major calls for reinforcements. The Africans insist they hand over Father Francis and Che-Che, or the rest will be killed. Meanwhile, Che-Che has red eyes and makes it really obvious that he's possessed.
Yep.
Father Francis is attacked by the locals and asks for last rites. He explains that Che-Che is possessed. Marin, remember he's in this too?
Oh, yeah.
Marin goes back into the church and sees what Che-Che has become. The two of them have a long conversation about faith and temptation. Marin goes out and gets his priest equipment and prepares to do battle. Yes, he's a priest again now. Marin starts the exorcism ritual. Marin sees himself in the past with the Nazis, but this time it goes even worse. One of those you could go back and change your own history deals.
Yeah, the demon tempting him.
That's not a very good temptation. It actually winds up worse.
Well, what I think the idea was that it went worse, but he wasn't at fault.
Okay.
So he wouldn't feel guilty, but it was still a horrific event. But
what you did was the best possible outcome.
As it happened for real, he was blaming himself, and he was racked by guilt.
Yeah.
And this reworking of it, he wouldn't have the guilt.
Well, that doesn't sway Marin, who continues with the ritual. Meanwhile, all hell breaks loose with the soldiers and Africans up above. Then, hey, the exorcism is over, and everything is fine everywhere. The soldiers go home, and Marin heads off to Rome. The end.
And then after this would have been the Africa thing with Pazuzu, and then later would have been the Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point in 1973, he comes back, finds the head, and that leads to all the other stuff.
Yep.
So, when The Exorcist 4 Dominion was being shot, the production company fired and replaced the director, and 90% of that film was reshot. It flopped at the box office, so they recut the original director's vision into this film. It's essentially the exact same story, but with several different actors and situations, and they didn't even get the Pazuzu statue for this one. The sets and props are mostly very different, and almost without exception are low budget and cheap. There's a lot more going on between the African and British soldiers. There's a lot more politics in this one. There's a lot more interpersonal drama in this one.
More of a psychological.
Yes.
Which was I guess, their original beef about it, that they didn't want that psychological stuff.
They wanted more gore and monsters, yes. Yeah. Well, the CGI is atrocious at best, but this film isn't about the monsters. It's about the drama of the situation. It's more psychological than anything else. And I did like it. It's a good movie. Again, just don't come for the monsters in this one. Yeah. Actually, the Che devil thing at the end was kind of lame, I thought.
No, I thought it was okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show. Thanks for joining us. Stop in at horrormovieguys.com for reading next week's reviews. Read last week's. We've got almost 800 movie reviews up there now.
Holy cow! Between the shorts and the movies, and occasional books.
Just a couple of books, yeah. Couple of books, couple of TV shows. 98%, probably better than 98% movies. Mm-hmm. Well, get ready for next week.
What are we going to see next week?
We're going to watch some more movies.
We're going to see Torment from 2013. Ooh. And then we will watch the hilarious Re-Animator from 1985, and the sequel, Bride of Re-Animator from 1990, and a sci-fi horror movie called Dark Side of the Moon, also from 1990.
Dark Side of the Moon?
Yep.
Sounds creepy.
And Pink Floydy. No connection, though.
Mr. Floyd is in this one?
They don't sing the song or anything.
They should.
They all should just break into chorus.
The rights to play that song probably cost more than the movie did.
Or the crew could have, spontaneously, broke into a chorus of it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.